Yo, what is up, everyone? This is your friendly neighborhood Odin here, drawing and recording a video for anybody who is interested in um, watching the movement on this book and listen to me ramble on about random shite. So, yeah, we're working on this page, the next page in the series. And if you've been following along, this is a pivotal moment because everybody keeps talking about the tentacle beast monster. Everyone talking about how Lovecraftian this looks, and I'm like, yeah. But I don't think you would see this in a Lovecraftian book. The tentacle beast monster actually getting its comeuppance, I guess. But there's still more monsters to come. Excuse me. As we introduce another one. So, our young female who is just murking monsters left and right, frying them, and yeah, fun times. So, that said, I'm almost hesitant to show this because I'm like, it kills that. Anybody who's been seeing the drawings from up to when I started making drawing videos to this point has watched this lots of. I won't have to draw another damn tentacle. When I first started, I was like, oh, they're fun to draw. And then I'm like, man, how many tentacles do I have to draw? So yeah, that's what we're working on now. Just it's a morning. I have my oldest daughter with me. It's her weekend with me. Some things planned for later, but just kind of having a lazy morning, and figured I'd do some drawing, talk a little bit about the drawing, etc. So, and yeah, this is fun. There's chunks of tentacle everywhere. So just highlighting those so they stand out a little bit from the ground and from the blood and goo that's everywhere. And then draw the wall in the background here in a sec. Drinking coffee, of course. I like my coffee black just like my metal. So you may notice this is a crappy Hobby Lobby-esque Justice League mug, which I have long time now given up on mainstream comics. Don't read them, don't buy them. And I have this mug because I've mentioned before, for my job, I'm a structural packaging designer, and I did a display design for the people who make the mugs. They got their license or whatever, did a display design. I don't know what stores it went into, but yeah, so I got to keep a bunch of shitty ass mugs. I actually got some cool ones from some of the projects for that company, but I got a Joker, like his face on a mug, a Harley Quinn, and it was old school Harley Quinn, Deadpool. Which other ones? I got those Justice League mugs. Oh, Darth Vader, Kylo Ren, Stormtrooper heads. So those ones were all shaped and molded to be like the heads, which made it hard to design a display for, because you had to secure the mug, but they all had these weird different shapes, and they're like, yeah, we want all of them. So I had to make a separate tray for each head. But that's why they pay me the little bucks. And then so one perk is you get to keep a bunch of this crappy merchandise. So from them, I've got some Nightmare Before Christmas glasses. What other shit? I get all kinds of random shit from the stuff I get to design. So again, small perk. Anyway, but yeah, I gave up on the mainstream, so I get all this stuff for licensed characters that I don't even care about anymore, to be full full disclosure. So, but hoping that someday we'll see some of the cool um, Comicsgate independent stuff moving beyond crowdfunding and into stores. That would be cool. Maybe someday I'll get to design a what you call it, a display for one of my peers, one of my contemporaries. Let's see if trying to see if perpendicular is gonna look right. I can't remember what the I erased all my erased all the dang perspective lines, and I was like, yeah, perpendicular looks correct. Yeah, moving right along with this book. Like I said, I often get questions on influence and style. So when I started drawing, it was, I call them the big three of the 90s. And there was other ones, of course, but they were the big three to me. And this is pre-image. I started aping the artwork as best I could of Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, and Todd McFarlane. And that's back when they were doing New Mutants, X-Force, X-Men, and Spider-Man. And they were the hot properties, man. Marvel knew it. Liefeld, Lee, and McFarlane knew it. That's what gave them the bravado to start Image. Was the fans had spoken and said, "You're our favorite artists." So the rest, as we know, is history. But that's how I started, and then Image blew up naturally, and then I started paying attention more to guys like Keown, who became my favorite pretty quickly, because Pitt was, and I was just always a fan of the extremely muscular characters, and nobody did that better than Keown. And so I was just like, freaking Pitt, man, was my favorite. Now, one thing that was, it's been well pointed out, was that there was lateness to books. There was all kinds of stuff with Image back in the day. And Keown was no exception. As much as I loved his work, it seemed like forever before we got another issue. And then at a certain point, I just kind of bailed on comics, whether good or bad. That was just where I was in life. So yeah, what do we? Oh yeah, I'm just gonna do this. So sometimes as you're drawing these, like, you get realizing that need to bring something out a little bit more, which is always easier than, you can always add more than is easier than taking away. I do have whiteout pens when needed, and I probably use them way more than I should as a crutch, but they're there when needed. But I need this arm to stand out from the rest, so we're just gonna thicken the outer line to help make it stand out. Yeah, and then post-Image days, that's when I went back and found a lot of old school artists that I really liked. And among those, a lot of it was gaining an appreciation for stuff that I didn't quite like when I was younger. I didn't appreciate the older artists. Because I remember how much the Image guys were talking up and homaging the great Jack Kirby. And then I was like, but I don't like his art. I didn't get it. But you're also a prisoner of the moment, you know? You like the 90s style because that's what you were exposed to. And so people always like ragging on the 90s art. And I'm like, that was the best if you ask me, but who's asking me? But I'm on this Facebook group called World's Weirdest something like that, or worst and weirdest comic book covers. And regularly there's certain posters on there that just love to like rag on 90s artists, and then everybody piles on. And sometimes it'll be some of my favorite artists, maybe not their best work, but you'll see the Namor from Jay Lee on there a lot, and I'm like, I thought those were cool looking, you know? And they're sitting there like, oh, look how ridiculous this is. And I'm like, I'm always playing devil's advocate. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Jay Lee's a master. And I can see why they poke fun at it, but I'm like, it just seems ridiculous to me because, yes, he had an outlandish style at the time. And but man, that was the charm, I thought. So, outside of those big ones, there was, like I said, Keown, but then there was a whole world of other artists, and got exposed to one of which, like I said, the aforementioned Jay Lee. Of course, related to Stan Lee and Jim Lee and every other Lee, Bruce Lee. I remember thinking that when I was a kid, because I knew they were both Asian, but I didn't, I think they look quite different. But I was like, I wonder if they're related, how stupid you are. I was like, yeah, I wonder if they're related to Stanley. And then one of my biggest influences was Simon Bisley, for the reasons of craziness in his style. So again, I like the big, muscly things that Keown could do, and Bisley was no exception. I mean, just my first exposure was Lobo. I saw the cover for Lobo's Back, #1, and forever thought Bisley was the greatest artist who ever lived. It was like, I had never seen an image look so cool at that time in my life. So that was a huge one. But anyway, back to the older artists. I went back and started gaining an appreciation for their professionalism, their cartooning abilities. So one that I really like is Buscema. And a big part of the reason is his layouts, his ability to tell a story, and his cartooning, facial expressions, etc. So that's not always my strong suit, so that's also another reason to appreciate it. But also appreciated his attitude. Big John he was a company man. I mean, he was just like working on so many titles. But what I really love, especially when he had a good inker, was his work on Savage Sword and Conan the Barbarian, but specifically Savage Sword because it was all black and white. And so you really got a sense of you really got this sense that he really enjoyed working on that book. And like I said, especially with a great inker, he worked with a few. My favorite that he worked with was Alfredo Alcala, I think that's his name. Who's the other one? Rudy Nebris, however you pronounce his name. I mean, there was just so many good ones because it was all black and white, but you could see the ink work shine on that, and that was mind blowing to me as a young reader. So to this day, Savage Sword is one of my favorite books to look at for inspiration and for fun. And let's see. And then the studio guys. Again, I didn't like Barry Windsor Smith at all when I was younger. Later found his work to be incredible. But of all the studio guys, I think, and I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school here, but I think Wrightson was, and I don't want to say head and shoulders because they were all pretty amazing. But for my liking, especially his ink work was ridiculous. Just ridiculous. So, yeah, and I think, as it stands now, probably my favorite artist right now is Wrightson. And, you know, it depends. Every day of the week changes. But when I look at what he did on the Frankenstein book and some of his Swamp Thing images, it's just mind-blowing. And, you know, it's one of those things where you're like, does it inspire you? Does it make you want to quit when they're that good? You're like, I'll never be that good. And these guys were just using brush and quill too, which always like blows me away how good they could be. So, but I will say a lot of those like kind of crazy stylized artists, like there's just a few that seem to be coming around in the 90s, and then comics just kind of gave up on people who were that crazy art wise, and it was sad. It got really stale, and all the art looked kind of similar and less expressive, less crazy. Whereas I liked those guys, so I was thinking of Sienkiewicz. He was like a big name, a hot commodity at one time, and then that style just went out of vogue. Same with Jay Lee, like I was saying. Like, people are making fun of it now, and I'm like, that's the shit I like, though. It was crazy. That's kind of where, you know, Bisley, Sienkiewicz, Jay Lee, those guys had just such a wild, stylized way of drawing, and I ate it up, man. And I still do. Still think those three artists and the stuff they did was some of the best ever. So anyway, I'm gonna put some lines in for this brick, well, cinder block kind of wall, and then go see where my daughter's at, and get our day going. She loves crystals, and there's a crystal show, crystal show going on. So go do that, get some dinner, and then I usually end my day where after we have fun and do all that stuff, then I kind of get back to drawing, and I usually watch UFC while my daughter, she's really playing the heck out of Red Dead Redemption 2, so she'll either do that or watch a movie herself, or maybe we'll watch a movie together. Maybe I won't watch UFC. It depends. If she would rather play video games, then I go, okay, I'll draw and watch UFC. If she would rather watch a movie together, I will still draw on my big clipboard and watch a movie with her. So we'll figure that all out. But right now. Oh, and I'm gonna darken in. Let's see, how do I want to do this? But I will say, finding time, it's not always the easiest, man. Because I am a single chap. I live alone, except when I have my daughters and have them on weekends. But I have a full-time job that's not close to me, so I have an hour of commuting each way. So I got 8 hours of work, an hour there, an hour back. I've got a big yard, and it always needs maintenance this time of year. And kids, and then also just trying to find recreation. Physical activity is important because you gotta stay in shape and not become a slob. So they say, I don't know. And then, yes, drawing takes time. It takes a lot of time sometimes. And I've seen people with some really meticulous, slow stroke inking. And I go, that's so awesome. I can't do that, but it's awesome that you do it. And sometimes I'm like, nope, no time for that. So I think I go, well, I like those guys like Simon Bisley and Sienkiewicz because they didn't have this like very meticulous kind of inks. They were wild and all over the place. And I go, well, that's more my style out of necessity. But I go, as long as the image looks cool, that's all I care about. Especially since I don't even know if there's going to be color on this. And if there is, you know, the colorist is going to have to know what to do with the weird rendering that I'm doing. It's not going to be clean like a lot of other inks, you know what I mean? But anyway, back to the where I found my style and what when I started, it was aping particular artists, and then as time went on, it was just evolved into what I do, and it had nothing to do with other artists. You know, some people say, "What are your influences?" I'm like, well, all kinds of stuff. And then you mention it, and they're like, well, I don't see any of that in there. And I'm like, oh, well, I never said I was like trying to be like them. I just said they were an influence. Whole different thing. So anymore, I'm just trying to improve my style, not trying to look like anybody else, for sure. And I hope I accomplish that. I hope people realize that whether you like what I'm doing or not, it's not going to look particularly like somebody else. And if it does, you know, whatever. I think for the most part, it's going to be its own thing, and hopefully people appreciate it for that. Again, whether you like it or not, you know, that's completely subjective. You either are or you aren't, you know, or you'll be indifferent. I don't know. So anyway, that's more or less a done page. I'll probably highlight some things. I want her to stand out a little more because they're about the same value. So she should be a little darker, and then he should be the darkest as far as lines. So I'll probably make her stand out a little bit more, highlight the shadows. Yeah. Anyway. Hope you all are doing awesome. This is Odin, just making a video for the halibut. You know, you guys know how much I like doing things for halibut. So if you ever wanted me to do something, just bring a halibut and go, Odin, dance, just for the halibut. And just have a floppy fish. Of course, I don't know. I gotta look this up. Because I can't remember how big a halibut is. They gotta be pretty big. Oh yeah, they're like the big flatfish. Yeah, yeah. Let's get them confused with cod, you know. And a cod is even bigger, I think. No, cod is not bigger. I was thinking of tuna. Tuna is the giant fish. But anyway, just for the halibut, which is a tasty, tasty white fish. Anyway, this is Odin. Hope you all are doing awesome and enjoy the rest of your weekend. See ya.